Hey friend, in today's watercolor landscape tutorial, I'll be teaching step by step how to paint this moody winter landscape with a cabin. Without further ado, let's get painting. I'll be using burnt umber Payne's gray and black. I'll also be using a little bit of white gouache. The brushes I'll be using are size 2, 6, and 16 round Princeton brush, and the paper I've taped down here is the size 5 by 7 inches. To begin our painting, I'm going to use our largest brush and make a wash in the background behind our cabin. We have kind of a whiteout, moody kind of landscape, and to start about halfway down the page, and I'll mark off exactly where. I'd say right around exactly halfway. I've got a little bit of a faint watered down line using a little bit of the Payne's gray. But from here all the way to the edges of the tape, I'm going to apply some water. And with the water kind of laid out, I want to mix a touch of Payne's gray with a little bit of burnt umber mixed into the Payne's gray. So this is just going to tone it down just a little bit. And to start, I'm just going to do a couple brush strokes, one a little bit higher from the left side and one slightly lower from the right side. And then I'm just going to drag down some of the pigment, just like that. I may layer just a little bit more here on this left side. And then I'm just going to take whatever is left on my brush and just add a little bit of faint wash here using this mixed color, leaving some of the white popping through, but this is just to give a little bit of a foggy effect. And I'm going to take whatever is left of that mixed color and just apply a little bit more towards the right. And a little bit more over here as well, just to kind of help define it. Okay, so now what I want to do is use our size 6 brush to kind of paint the edges of our water. And I'm going to take a little bit of watered down Payne's gray and kind of loosely sketch out the layout of our pond and like our lake here. I'm going to give a little bit of a gap, about just under an inch, and I'm just going to paint with a little bit of jagged texture to the line work, our pond silhouette. So I've got this kind of jagged line. From here, I'm going to do a couple of rounded curves, kind of swooping in, and then a couple more jagged kind of triangle-like shapes here. And then I'm going to allow the river to kind of come back out again, off towards the right. Next, I want to paint a little bit of part of the snowbank popping through here. So I'm just loosely outlining that area. And then I'm going to do a little subtle curve there, and then just bring the river out towards the left. So our river outline is very loose, like super, just like jagged. So if yours is jagged and kind of topsy-turvy, that's good. So with that, I'm going to take some water with my brush. I need to clean my brush first. And I'm just going to allow the sketch line that's still wet to bleed into the river. That's going to add just a nice softness of color. Now I'm going to mix equal parts Van Dyke Brown with some Payne's Gray to kind of recreate this color up here that we did previously. So I'm just going to mix up some more of that color. Okay, and using that, I want to add a little bit of this color towards the right, allowing it to kind of softly bleed out into the river. And a little bit up here as well. I'm going to add some over here, some shading. Just along these edges. Then I'm going to take a clean brush and just kind of smooth out some of these applications of our shaded color, just using the belly of my brush to kind of buff out some of that. Now I'm going to take a blend of Prussian blue and a little bit of Payne's Gray, just to tone it down. And then just a hint of Van Dyke Brown as well. And I just want to add a few pops of this blue, kind of shining through here. It's a nice earthy, kind of muted blue. And I'm going to rinse my brush off again and take a clean brush and just do the same kind of blending, just using the side angle of my brush to get this nice soft blend and incorporation of color. Now I'm going to take a little bit of plain Payne's Gray and add some towards the very tip top of this area here to be our shaded color. I'm going to add a little bit up towards the left too. And then a little bit in this curve. Some here down below this kind of pointed edge and a little bit along here as well. All right, now I want to take my brush and do just a little bit of some brush strokes using the Payne's Gray, Van Dyke Brown, and Prussian blue blend. I'm just adding a few very delicate, dainty strokes that are horizontal. Just a few, just to give a little bit of variegation in our river. So just a slight bit. Not going too crazy with it. Alrighty, now I'm just gonna allow the river to set. And while it's setting, I'm just gonna take a look here, and I wanna just add a little bit of texture and a little bit of like earthiness to our snow. So I'm gonna take our brush and remix that Payne's Gray and Van Dyke Brown blend. I really like the softness of that color and how it's like earthy but still warm. Okay, so I'm just going to add a few touches of this kind of earthy toned color and add a little bit of texture alongside this lower edge here of our snow. And I'm going to add some up here as well. And it's basically almost mimicking like a little bit of some rocks popping through the snow. I'll do some over towards the right. And just a few towards the top here. Okay, so I'm just gonna allow our sky and our river to fully set, and when we come back, we'll move on to the next stage. Okay, so now using our size 2 brush, I'm just gonna use the same color, the mixed color of the brown, Payne's Gray, and do a little sketch of our cabin. And for the cabin, I'm gonna start with a little square, and it goes into the snow. This is just a little sketch, by the way, so it'll look different. We're gonna fill it in quite well. Then from here, I'm going to do a long line just like that, and then do kind of a triangle shape up top. And it's going, the roof is going to lower down just a little bit, so I'm kind of just marking that. And then another parallel line and then a diagonal line just to connect to the roof. And here's going to be our door. And then I want to do just like a really cute window. And I'm debating doing a circle window here or 2 little square ones. I think I'm gonna go with the 2 square ones. So I'm just gonna mark off a couple squares. Just like that. And from here, I'm going to take our mixed color and just fill in, starting with the roof and all the way around the doors and the windows, the single door in the window. from here, I'm just going to fill in some of the area towards the right, but then I'm going to allow it to fade out with some water, believe it or not, because I want to apply some bushes here. So I'm just adding a little bit of water to kind of fog it out slightly. I'm going to add just a touch more color as well. And then I'm just going to fog out the right side too. And using some of the water that I just applied over towards the right, I'm going to add a little bit of shadow with some Payne's gray. And some plain burnt umber. And I feel like I've been saying Van Dyke Brown instead of burnt umber, so I apologize. If I haven't done that, just carry on. Burnt umber or Van Dyke Brown would be perfectly adequate for this painting. They're both very similar. So Van Dyke Brown is just naturally a little bit darker, but you can water it down to lighten it up. Either way is totally fine. So I'm now going to tap in some burnt umber and a little bit of black as well, kind of layered on there. Just a faint amount of black. And then I'm going to take a little bit of water and just try to blend this area out a little bit softer. Okay, now we've got that soft blend. I'm going to add just a touch more Payne's gray. Okay, now all I want to do is kind of define the bottom of where the snowbank meets kind of this area near the cabin. From this left side, I'm just going to carry on a little bit of a hill, kind of sloping down, just like so, and then grab a little bit of water just to help buff that line out a little bit. And then I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber and apply some towards the left with a touch of black layered on top just to tone it down just a little bit. Okay, so now what I want to do is add a little bit of black using my size 2 brush now, adding a little bit more detail to our cabin. So I'm just going to add a little bit more depth and shading underneath the roof here. I'm just dragging it down. And I'm gonna apply just a little bit underneath the roof as well on the right side. And then using a little bit of burnt umber mixed into the black, I'm just going to give a little chimney and apply that over towards the top right corner. And I also just want to smooth out this edge here with a little bit of water. Okay, so we will come back when that area is dry, but in the meantime, I'm going to take a little bit of water with my size 16 brush and take a good amount of burnt umber mixed with some black. And I'm going to create this kind of dark brown shadow, kind of doing this zigzag motion off towards the right. And just above that, I'm gonna apply a little touch of Payne's gray just in the upper area. And then I'm going to rinse my brush off completely and just take some water and allow the water to kind of work its magic and blend out some of those colors nice and softly. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of texture up just above this area where we laid out the burnt umber and some of the black. I'm just adding a little bit of texture with the tip of my brush. Okay, so now I'm going to add a touch more Payne's gray over towards the left here, just to add even more depth and shadow. And while this area is still a little bit wet here, I'm just gonna add a little touch more of Payne's gray. Just a little bit. I like to continue to build our depth and dimension and our shading. Okay, so now I want to allow the background to fully dry. And I actually did just let my background fully dry. So if your background is not dry yet, go ahead and pause and allow that background to set and dry. Now, next, once it's dry, I'm going to mix up some burnt umber with some black. And using that color, I just want to add a little bit of loose texture of just some dry brush and foliage or remnants of foliage. And I'm just doing this really loose kind of bush-like texture, and I'm going to incorporate it all the way across the brown area. So we have this misty brown background color, and I'm just incorporating just some texture to there. Okay, now I want to do the same thing over towards the left side. Just adding a little bit of really loose layered texture using the tip of my size 2 brush. And I'm playing around with the height, but basically I'm just layering these angled lines just to mimic some bushes that have lost all their leaves, so they're a little bit straggly. That's okay. So I'm just incorporating a few here as well. Okay, so now what I want to do is take some plain old black, and using the black I want to paint a few trees. So I'm going to start to the right of our cabin here, and I'm just going to paint one outline of a tree. The trunk is going to be slightly thicker, and the branches are going to be a little bit more on the daintier side. And with the branches, I like to mimic the Y shape. So what I mean by that is you could see I add like a second arm, and it's like we're just painting interlaced, layered, different angled Y letters. So you can kind of build off of some of them. Okay, so there's our first tree. I'm now going to do a second one off towards the left here. And I'm going to start over towards the far left, and I'm going to implement it above, this time above the brown kind of layered shrubs. And here is our trunk, and then I'm going to, from there, just layer on some Y branches. I'm using really dainty, delicate pressure to get those kind of smooth, delicate brush strokes. You can have this one kind of curve off more towards the center of the page. Okay, now I want to do a second tree, just kind of a little bit more spaced out, just about a centimeter out. And this one might be a little bit shorter. And I take that back. This one's going to be stockier, unintentionally. That's okay. We pivot, we adjust, that's fine. So I've got a little bit of a stockier tree. So I'm just smoothing out these edges a little bit. And then I'm going to do kind of like a Y split, just kind of off in the center. And then from here, I'm just going to start building all of our branches. And it's layered on top of this other tree. Then maybe there's going to be another branch kind of coming off the base just for variety. I feel like that's what's the most fun part about painting trees is there's not really a wrong way to do it. The more random, the better. You want your trees to kind of be irregular. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm just going to tuck in the base of this tree a little bit more, just have a little bit of texture, just like that. And then I'm going to define our door. I'm going to make our door a dark brown. So I'm going to do some burnt umber with a little bit of black. And our door is going to be a nice little tall rectangle, just vertical. Then I'm going to water down a touch of some plain Payne's gray, not Payne's gray, sorry. Water down some burnt umber. And it's going to be very faint, and that's the color I'm going to use to fill in our windows. Just to get this like soft amber glow. And it's very watered down to get that like softness. Okay, so next, I would like to take a little bit of white gouache. So I'm going to mix up my white gouache, which my water jar was actually resting on. Whoops. I will have to clean the bottom of my jar. That's okay. So I'm going to take some white gouache and paint some on the roof of our cabin. I'm going to redefine the edges here. Okay, I love the crisp white roof we have. And now I want to take a little bit of black, just very watered down. I'm just going to define the left side of this chimney. Okay, so next I want to add a little bit of texture to our snow. Something that I really like about this landscape is how moody and misty it is. So we've got like this fade out here with the edge of the cabin. So it's like a very soft fade into some mist and fog that's cascading down from what appears to be some really faded out misty kind of mountains out in the background. But I want to add a little bit more texture and crispness to this. So in order to do that, I want to add some texture with our snow. So I'm going to mix up a touch of Payne's Gray with just a little bit of burnt umber, very small amount, mostly Payne's Gray, and some black. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is kind of define this edge that kind of meets the start of the river. So I'm just adding a little bit of texture here. And with that, I'll add just a little bit of water alongside that edge. And from here, I'm just gonna take the watery quality of what's left on my brush and add some texture using the side of my brush here. And then I'm allowing some negative space from the white of the watercolor paper to kind of pop through. Do you want to define this area just a tad more? Here we go. Okay, and then I'm just going to do the same thing over towards the right, just adding a few touches of this color. And I'm just defining some shadow alongside that edge. And I'll do the same thing up towards this edge, just above the river. And then I want just some shadow applied below this tree. into the right of the cabin, just down below. And taking a second look, I'm just going to add a little tucked in more of our shaded color of our snow right in here, just to give it a little bit more balance. Then maybe just a touch down below here as well. And no joke, it just started raining outside, so this painting is just absolutely perfect for the mood. That's probably why the lighting is a little bit darker. I always use natural light when I film, but it's definitely setting the tone. And I also have some pumpkin bread baking in the oven, so I'm a happy camper. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this watercolor tutorial. This one was so much fun to paint. I felt like it just was like a little bit of a mix with using a touch of earthy tones with some cooler toned colors such as the Payne's gray and the black. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any further watercolor landscape tutorials.